Have you ever had a manager who thought policy meant whatever they wanted? Back in my mid-20s, I worked for a massive multinational accounting firm. Even though I was still pretty early in my career, I had one habit that never changed. I spoke up when something didn't make sense. It didn't matter if it made things awkward. Staying quiet just wasn't in my nature. Our director, who I'll call Karen, started out as someone we genuinely liked. When she first joined the team, she pushed for improvements, backed us up, and actually listened. But the moment she was promoted to director and started reporting directly to a partner, everything flipped. Suddenly, her entire personality revolved around cutting costs and quoting policy for every little thing. Her cost-cutting got out of hand quickly. She removed the team's stationery budget entirely and told us to borrow pens from other departments. She set a one-drink, one-course limit for team dinners while other departments were going out for full company-funded meals. She refused to approve overtime unless it was requested absurdly early, even though our workload constantly shifted. And to top it off, she started hiring school leavers instead of graduates to save money, despite the fact that the role clearly required experience. Anytime someone questioned her decisions, her response was always the same. It's policy. HR requires it. She treated HR like a magical rule-making machine dedicated exclusively to our tiny team. Then came her prized project, a brand new system she brought in from an external training company. She talked about it non-stop, convinced she had revolutionized our workflow. The problem was that the system was complicated, technical, and normally required several days of training. But because the trainers charged by the hour, she booked everything into one full day. 2 days before the training, she sent out an email with the agenda. It would run straight through the day, and lunch would be provided. But it would be a working lunch, meaning no break, no fresh air, and no chance to clear our heads. That hit a nerve for me. At the time, I was managing anxiety, and my lunch break was one of the few moments I used to step outside and reset. So I went to her privately and asked if I could take my usual hour outside the building. Her answer came instantly. It's policy. Training is mandatory. You're expected to adapt your schedule. If you have an issue, check the HR manual. The tone made it clear she thought the conversation was over. But instead of flipping through the manual, I contacted HR directly. I explained the situation and phrased it exactly the way she always dismissed. This affects my mental well-being. HR replied the next morning and copied her in. Their answer was simple. Training is legally considered work, and any employee working a full day must receive their standard break, which they are free to use however they choose. Karen backed down immediately in writing. But when she pulled me aside later, she tried to reframe it as a one-time exception for me only and asked me not to tell the rest of the team. That wasn't going to happen. She wasn't granting a special favor. She had ignored employment rules, and the team deserved to know the truth. On training day, a stack of budget sandwiches was delivered. Nothing like the catering service our building normally used. The meeting room was warm and crowded, and the trainers were already preparing for a long day. When the sandwiches were finally set out, I stood up, grabbed my things, and said clearly, "I'm heading out for my lunch break. I'll be back in an hour." All eyes turned toward me. Then, one of my coworkers stood. Then another, until the entire team stood up together. Karen's face froze. "Where are you all going?" she asked, trying to sound casual. One of my teammates replied calmly, "HR said we're allowed our full lunch break. We're taking it." She knew she couldn't argue, not without exposing the entire situation. So she stayed silent as all 12 of us walked out, leaving her alone in the room with the trainers and a pile of untouched sandwiches. Outside, the mood was completely different. We laughed, relaxed, enjoyed the air, and finally felt like we had a real break. It was the first time in months the whole team felt unified. When we returned, she acted like nothing had happened, but her behavior changed after that. She stopped throwing around the word policy quite so easily, and she avoided pushing HR's name into every decision. The system training had to be extended to a second day because everything obviously couldn't be learned in one rushed session, and the extra cost didn't go unnoticed. A few months later, I left the company. Most of the team followed not long after, replaced by the low-cost hires she preferred, but I'll always remember how satisfying it felt to walk out for that break together, knowing she couldn't stop us.